afternoon. I'm going to bring the Board of Supervisors back to order, and we're going to take up Agenda Item 17A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the review of proposals submitted by Paula Seek LLC and Carson City Veterans Village Coalition Group concerning 3410 Buckeye Way. Mr. Stuckey, do you want to take us through a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, disclosure, I wrote it down too. Disclosure, Mr. Giomi?
NRS 281A420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I'm employed by Nevada Health Centers, a nonprofit organization where I oversee land purchases. In that capacity, I'm dealing with CPLC Nevada on behalf of my employer in relation to possible health center project in southern Nevada. That proposed project is in its preliminary formative stages, and even if transacted, should not result in an economic benefit to my employer. CPLC is one of two coalition parties of the Carson City's Veterans Village proposal, but I do not believe my involvement with the Southern Nevada project constitutes a substantial and continuing business relationship with either CPLC or the Veterans Village proposer. Because Nevada's ethics law requires an abstention only in clear cases where the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in a particular situation would be materially affected by a commitment in a private capacity, and here I have no commitment. I do not have a disqualifying conflict. I make this disclosure for purposes of full transparency, but I will be voting on this matter.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Stuckey.
Great. Good afternoon, Board. Dan Stuckey, City Engineer for the record. So I'm going to take you through kind of the process, how this has progressed over the last 6 months or so, as well as talk about the format of today so everybody kind of understands of today's item. And then I'll also present kind of a high-level comparison overview of the projects, just kind of the basic components. So that's what I'll go over right now. So as you know, January 17th, the board directed staff to prepare a request for proposals to seek proposals from developers to develop the Buckeye Way site, about almost 6.5 acres for affordable housing. Staff, the board was instrumental in helping with drafting the RFP as well, and we advertised the RFP on September 12th. We had a pre-proposal meeting on October 1st, and this is where prospective proposers, we met at the Public Works Building. We talked about the project, or at least the RFP. We walked the site, addressed any questions. So that was a good, productive meeting there. We obviously collected the proposals. There was 2 proposals, one from Palaseek LLP and one from Carson City Veterans Village Coalition Group. The review committee that was formed by 5 internal staff at the city, as well as 1 outside representative from the city of Reno to score and evaluate those proposals. There were project references on each of those proposals. I have reached out to all the project references that were listed. I've heard back from a couple. I think the timing of this type of year, we haven't received comments from everyone, but the references that I heard back from were very positive of both the proposers. So I did want to put that out, that has been checked. And so here's the format that we are anticipating for today's meeting. Each applicant or proposer has a 20-minute maximum presentation. I believe in a PowerPoint format. They'll come up here, present their proposal, their project to you. The other the proposer will be out of the room during that time. You'll have an opportunity to ask your questions to each proposer, and then we'll switch that around so the other proposer will come in and you'll get to ask your questions to them as well. I tried to prepare, and this is by no means a substitute for what you're going to hear from the proposers, nor what you saw in the agenda packet as far as their proposals. I tried to pick certain high-level pieces out of each proposal to kind of a comparative analysis. They are somewhat, different projects, and I'm sure you'll find out a lot more about them as each applicant comes up and gives their presentation. But I did want to go through this list briefly with you. You can see the columns Palaseek and then the Carson Coalition there on the right-hand column. I just had the number of units proposed. You can see the difference between the 2 proposals. The unit types, each of them, have a 1 and 2 bedroom option. Palaseek was proposing 5 3-bedroom units, and you can see the square footage of those units. Again, they're going to talk much more about this. The affordability, Each of them broke down kind of as far as the AMI stands for area median income. And so kind of how they're distributing each of those units between the AMI there. So I gave a summary of that. How to ensure long-term affordability, again, something I'm sure each of them will talk about more. But what I saw in their proposals, Palace hopes to meet the city's objectives primarily through a developers agreement. Carson City, the coalition group, just proposed a deed restriction on the land for affordable housing, plus meeting the city's objectives through a developers agreement. Property acquisition method, Palace proposed that the city convey the land for $10,000 to cover the transfer and taxes, title transfer and taxes. Carson City Coalition land conveyed at no cost. Financing, I tried to summarize as best as I could, but each of them has a lot of different options, which you would expect. Obviously, there's some HUD financing options there on both proposers had that. And then you can see the Carson City does have some other different grants and funding opportunities as well, both federal and state. Timeline for, I put when each of them decided or proposed starting construction, and then the CO, the certificate of occupancy, I captured as well. So you can see slightly different timeframes there as well. So I did want to point that out. Estimated project costs, of course, one has a lot more units proposed than the other, but on a per unit basis, it's pretty similar in cost. And then the other category I had there was the on-site live-in manager or management company as far as maintaining the premises after it's built. And Palace has proposed 2 permanent full-time managers, and then Carson City Coalition Veterans Group has proposed a property management company. So again, that's just a resource. No, it's not a substitute for what you'll hear, but I did want to kind of give you those summaries of the proposals that you have in your packet. With that, I think we'll bring in the first proposer, which is the Carson City, Nancy, is it Carson City Coalition first? Veterans. Oh, okay.
Wait, we might have some general questions first before we get into the presentations. So, Mr. Giomi?
So I asked Stephanie this the other day, but I think it bears repeating. Neither one of these appear to be 501c3s, so they don't appear to be federal nonprofits. I asked you about land transfer and that it doesn't necessarily have to be transferred to a nonprofit as long as it is transferred for use of low-income housing. And that's a fair assessment, correct?
Correct. For the record, Stephanie Hicks, Deputy City Manager. So there's a couple different provisions under NRS 244 that would allow us to convey property. One of them does have to do with it being an affordable housing project. The other one can be for a for-profit corporation as long as there's a public benefit. So we would just have to fit it into one of those provisions under NRS.
And you don't see a problem doing that with either of these in the for-profit side? Okay.
Go ahead.
Does it, and this is probably something to get into the discussion on because they're both proposing it, well, Palace is proposing to operate it with a partnership with a nonprofit. CCVV is saying they're a nonprofit, but I think they're only a state nonprofit, not a federal nonprofit. So does that matter? I mean, I guess does that, as far as you guys know legally, does that matter?
On the federal funds.
To answer that question, I don't think that makes a legal distinction, but I'll have Todd, who's been working closely on this matter, to come up and provide some more input.
Todd appears not to want to answer that question, Dan.
Federal funds.
I don't think that
Shouldn't matter.
shouldn't matter. Certainly as
So
far
I'm
as
thinking of the HUD component and will they, I mean, I thought,
On financing.
on financing. I mean, from the perspective of Chapter 244, I'm not sure how much difference it's going to make. I think there's mechanisms that can be that can work either way. Certainly on the financing side, and that's not my forte, and I would have to do more research on it. I think it, well, Mayor Pro Tem Bagwell is vigorously telling me
Lots
that
of
it
that.
does.
I've worked a lot of these projects. So if they use home funds, they'll have to have a federal nonprofit status.
Yeah,
do
501c something, C
Right.
something.
So, I mean, depending on which methodology
Yeah.
they select and ultimately get in their financing, some of these they're eligible to apply for in one fashion and some you're not, based on your status.
And then we also talked about, and I believe this is also a HUD issue. My other question was about being able to give priority to residents of Carson City. That's very important for me. But I know that if we take federal funds, we may not be able to do that. So I guess my question is, do we know if we invest city funds, for instance, if we were to take the 300,000 from the land sale on Brown Street, dedicate that to whoever we award this to, whether it be one of these two or someone in the future, does that allow enough of a local investment or local government funding to be able to give priority to local residents?
Thank you for the question. I would ask Mary Jane if she can come up. She oversees those grant programs, and we had a conversation after you and I discussed it to look at what our grant agreement said and if there were some provisions in there for us to do that.
No, Mary Jane doesn't want to answer the question either. Todd doesn't want to answer questions. Mary Jane doesn't want to answer questions.
They're complex
Mary Jane Ostrander, Manager of Carson City Human Services. And I mean, that's a good question. I haven't ran into a situation where it's combined like that. I think because I don't think the 300,000 would fund the whole thing.
Well,
So there would be some HUD dollars there. And I'm speculating, I can find out more specific answer. But I'm speculating, since the HUD is tied to it at all, it may need to go out nationally. So the application process for the housing choice vouchers, formerly known as Section 8, would go out nationally. And so we would get applicants from wherever.
So we would have no way then, in your opinion, to prioritize this for Carson City residents?
I'm not sure we would. You know, I don't think so, based on HUD does not want, in the HUD programs I have experience with, you cannot discriminate against somebody that's not from your community. They don't care who it is. If they're in front of you and they need housing, you consider it.
Okay. I don't like that answer, but I'm good for now. Go ahead, Brad.
Mr. Barrett?
I determined as I looked over this before, and it still says the same thing in Rod's, that I do not have a conflict because it's local CDBG funds. Though my wife works for the state, it's pass-through money and we administer it, as I understand it. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I don't believe I do, but Dan, before we get to that point, would you look into that? Because it's CDBG, but it has nothing to do with my spouse.
Do we need to take a brief recess for you to talk about that? Because didn't we change CDBG, they do? We recommend, but we changed the level in CDBG. Do you need a brief recess?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem, I am going to ask for just a very short recess
Just get
so I
right.
can communicate with Supervisor Barrett and make sure that I've got all the facts relevant before I advise him on a potential conflict. This is the first time I'm hearing about it, so
Yep.
I do apologize for that.
I don't believe I have a recess. I'll take your advice.
Okay,
I didn't believe I had one, so I didn't check in.
it's okay.
Yeah,
Supervisor Baunkowski?
so going back to Stacy's concern, I read an article that was written recently about Seattle and Los Angeles and how both cities had spent, it was San Francisco, not Los Angeles, and that they spent tens of millions of dollars building affordable and homeless housing. And I think in Seattle's case, after they built the affordable housing and the homeless housing, their homeless population increased by 43%, and I think in San Francisco was like 37%. So it's a case of if you provide more services, more people will show up to take advantage of those services. And I think that this gets at the crux of what Stacy's trying to get at, and you can correct me if I'm not right, but I'm not sure that we want to build a facility that's going to be a regional draw for homeless people. I think the goal for us up here has been to try to accommodate our local homeless and low-income population. So I assume that that's what you're getting at.
No, that's exactly what I'm getting at. I mean, I'm not trying to sound callous, but I don't want to open affordable housing and then have people from, and again, I'm not trying to be mean, but I don't have people from Washoe County and Clark County and Lyon County coming here, taking advantage of the low-income housing that we've invested our taxpayers' resources on, and then furthermore, using additional resources because they've moved into our community and now are residents of our town and now are using our social services and our, when they are to our residents. I mean, that's a real issue for me.
Yeah, and for me as well.
So one of the things I I do have a little bit of experience in this arena. So one of the issues right now, it's my understanding that the lists are closed, which works in a HUD. What they do is open up lists to collect names, to score them, rank them, give them point values, and then offer them places to live. The list is currently closed. You got that statewide, there was about 2,000 on the list, but current for our local area is still around 200 existing vouchers that if we don't open this list, that have already been given priority status and have a voucher they could use in the facility. So I just want to, if you don't open up a list and create some more, we do have 200-ish, we'll go with ish, because I don't think Mary Jane or I had
But
the
those
last
200 could be from anywhere.
No, we have local, about 200.
What is local
2,000,
exactly?
Carson City area. We have 200-ish.
I get area. What, is that Lyon County? Is it Washoe County? Is it Douglas County?
No, it was Carson City,
think
so there could
it's-
be Mound House if I remember in that.
Rural Nevada.
Yeah.
And they can, even if it's 200 right here, Carson City, they can move that voucher anywhere. So rural Nevada, I think it's about 200. And
So that's all rural Nevada.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a Nevada Rural Housing Authority, so they cover any of that.
Right.
And they usually expect about 50% of those to come back unable to use because they cannot find any housing.
Right.
But it's almost like 50%.
Right, and there wasn't any vouchers in land, or there's no vouchers in white. Anyway, yeah, there isn't anywhere in any of those. But let's see, might have to just take a brief recess. We'll just take a recess and wait for Mr. Barrett to confer on whether he can participate or not. So we'll just give him a moment. We're back on the record, thank you.
Yeah, in the interest of transparency, I will say that my spouse is the state administrator for CDBG funds, and I've discussed it with council. It will not affect my decision in this, and if you could put it in the terms that you gave to me, I'd appreciate it, Dan.
No, absolutely. I'm happy to. So just to clarify for the record, I had a brief conversation, sidebar with Supervisor Barrett. He's provided me with the facts and the role that his wife plays as the state administrator for the CDBG funds. Understand that one of their two proposers may have as part of their funding mechanism a portion of the CDBG funds. However, Mr. Barrett's commitment in a private capacity to his wife does not impact or involve his commitment in private capacity to either one of the two proposers. I don't think that materially his independence of judgment would be affected. He also does not believe his independence of judgment would be affected. Therefore, based on those facts, I do not think he has a disqualifying conflict, and he can proceed to participate and also vote as he would like to. But we did want to establish this for full clarity and transparency on the record. So I appreciate the heads up, Mr. Barrett. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody have any further questions of staff in advance of bringing in? Anyone? No? Okay. If you want to, we're going to hear from the Veterans Coalition first. Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Ed Schnabel. I'm president of the Carson City Veterans Village, 501c3, and I'd like to give you a little bit of background on it, how we came about. 3 years ago today, at the Carson City Vietnam Veterans Christmas Party, I was at a table with a number of other veterans, and we began talking about homeless veterans and their plights and problems and why they're homeless. And I said, I want to do something about that. And who wants to help me? Now, being good ex-servicemen, nobody volunteered. They learned that. So I didn't get any help there. But I'm a member of the Elks, and another fellow and I, one day after an Elks meeting, we got talking. Carl Hopper, he's our vice president, actually. And he said, I would like to do that also. So we said, all right, let's form an organization and see what we can do. So then we found a number of other people, like-minded, who would serve on the board. Went down to the Secretary of State's office, paid the $50, got her name, and then filed the papers with the IRS, paid them the money. And then the following Monday, I got a letter from the IRS in the mail, which we all love to get. I said, what's this now? I filed it on Wednesday. On Monday morning, I had the letter, July 26th, 2018, that we're 501c3. Magic. It's wonderful. So that's how we came about. And, I'm not going to belabor the points by going all through the RFP. You all have it in front of you, so you can see who we are, what we're doing, what we want to do. Get on to the team experience part. The real point man on that is Mr. Eddie Hult. He's the experienced one. He's done projects here. He's done projects all over northern Nevada, and very successfully. Technical capacity, that's also pretty well spelled out in the RFP that we responded to. Under the Nevada Rural Housing Authority, I'd just like to say that they did say they're going to try to get us some vouchers. And earlier this year, I had the opportunity to meet Bill's staff. And he invited me in, and staff in a big conference room, 10 or 12, I don't know how many there were. But And each person introduced themselves and told me what they did. And I'll tell you, I was very impressed, very professional, very knowledgeable. And I thanked him for that, and I'll tell you why in a few more pages. Our project approach, you'll see a couple of things here, you know what they are. It wasn't mentioned in the RFP, but there's going to have to be a certified needs assessment done for this project, because any lender is going to have to see one before he's going to come up with any money for the project. So certified needs assessment for the workforce, for veterans, and we feel that our proposal is compatible with the existing single-family homes that are to butts. And we envision the subdivision, you know, it's semi-rural and would be complementary to Carson City, not a institutional facility. If you want an institutional facility, we can do one, but that's not what we thought would be appropriate for Carson City. On the project approach, the other thing I would just add in there on the distinctive character and input is that there's, of course, will be parking and driveways and things like that. The project approach, it'll be a mix of transitional and permanent housing, a mix of tenants, not just veterans. We realize that veterans are important, and there are going to be veterans there, but there are also, as you pointed out in your RFP, people who are working in Carson City that need housing. And so we feel that preference is given to Carson City veterans and preference is given to people and families who are employed in Carson City. The Nevada, on the project approach, the Rural Housing Authority, as I just mentioned, I met their staff and I was really impressed with them all and what they are able and capable of doing. But under their bullet, the financing research assistance, the one thing I found there that I didn't know about is that they will assist with, you get people out of in the transitional housing that get themselves up, they will assist with down payments, lenders, and helping them buy a home. And I think that's tremendous, and we would look forward to them doing that. Serving the needs of the Carson City residents, once again, veterans, women, people with disabilities, and homeless. There are motels in town where people are living, weekly, daily, monthly basis, families, kids, single people, couch surfers. There's quite a bit of that going on. Now, this next part was going to be done by one of my other board members, Natalie Stirring. However, she is very ill. So I am going to fill in for Natalie, and I am not going to do near the justice that she would do, because these are some things that are very near and dear to her. Female veterans and children. She's a director of Veterans Resource Center, and she was here in Carson. She recently got moved up to Reno, and she's the director up there now. But, you know, she's very sincerely interested and wants to do these things, support systems for all available people, not just veterans. Anybody who wants the support systems, they would be there. There'd be a community center for this with offices and training and, you know, internal on-site services with a whole person approach around mental and physical health. The Veterans Resource Center here in Carson last year assisted 120 households. And she said at least 80% of those were in Carson City. The external assistance then, once again, the Nevada Rural Housing Management Team, Veterans Resource Center, the VA, of course, also is in there. And at this point, I'll let Eddie Hult take over.
All right, again, I'm Eddie Holt, the longtime developer.
Turn screen.
Eddie Holt, longtime developer in Nevada, both multifamily, single family, as well as market rate, and as well as low affordable income housing the last 8 or 9 years of my career. I've been invited with this group to help them bring a concept together, a development concept and a building concept together And hopefully we can make this work with everything they've got going, get lending. I'm going to help with those functions. So when I get to the conceptual site plan, here's your base site plan. Just really quickly, we want to make it more subdivision look rather than industrial. We're not close to it, two-story or three-story building type concept, but we want to keep it more of a rural setting. You'll see in my unit plans is mostly look like this little triplex, duplex, single story. Makes it easier for the people, for ADA and for other people, that, especially the elderly and families, to be able to get in and out of. Much different than the Richards Crossing project that I was part of. Floor plans, basically all efficiency units. The idea of efficiency units generally is, yeah, you want to get people in there, you want to get people transitioned. If it becomes more of a transitional housing project, then people are going to want to tend to move on when they can self-support themselves to the bigger, 700 square foot, 2-bedroom unit that's typical apartment size. So you keep the efficiency units just as direct as you can and make it comfortable for them, but not too comfortable. So they don't make it the place they're going to live the rest of their life unless they have to. That's what we're trying to do, try to create a little bit of a turnover so we can get people that really are in need to be there. Here's just some elevations. Basic elevations. These efficiency units and elevations are based on a project I built in Ely about 4.5 years ago. It was for the Robinson Mine. And therefore, it was something I also built many years ago in Elko, back in the Elko-Carlin area. Timeline and schedule. This is just a quick concept of how everything doing. This is a very conservative timeline. It can be compressed even more so, but there are things that we have to deal with. There's lending. We'll talk about in a minute. There's lending issues. There's review and planning. There's development agreements we've got to put together. There's occupancy on a project like this is not easy. We'll let the central needs assessment tell us a little bit how to approach that, as well as our experts that we have. So, but this is probably the longest it would be, but it could be compressed if everything goes really, really well. Again, another look at it, just another view of that. But again, lending approvals, city approvals, tenant occupancy issues might be try to get the issues going. Financially, use our experience. Stack of permanent items would be a stacked financing concept where we get a permanent loan, a bridge into permanent loan. Probably it's 60 to 70% LTV. The rest of it would be done by things like USDA or HUD. Could be home funds, state home funds. It could be Charles Schwab AHP funds. Could be even some CBG funds if there's any available, locally or the county. We would look at all those possibilities. The more of those I can get and grab, and I've got history with Nevada Rural Housing and with La Casa I'm with now, that I've been able to be successful at those applications, that we can use those financials to get as much equity in the project as we can to keep the rents as low as possible. Just a typical financial summary. Project costs. The project total per square feet cost is high here, but when you work with efficiency units that are half the size of a normal apartment, when you got to put same amount of sinks in, same amount of everything in, it makes it look high. That really would be more like about $200 a square foot if it was a 600 square foot normal 2-bedroom unit. So those just look high just because of the numbers, but the builders that I use for my other projects, I have Ryder Homes, I have Gurdon Homes, I have 3 or 4 different builders that I have at my fingertips that are interested in it. Ryder Homes, for example, is going to be building a project over by Lampa in the school area. That project they have, they'd be right here, right next to me, and they're building my Dayton project right now. So, in the presentation, I'll turn it back over to Ed.
Well, I want to thank you. One thing I'd like to say is that if you don't like what we put, let us know how we can change it. We're very flexible. We want to see this thing go. We want to see it go in a good manner for Carson City. Myself and my board members, we live in Carson City. We don't want a piece of junk. We want it to be something that Carson City can be proud of. Be glad to take your questions.
Questions from the board? Mr. Brewer, do you want to come up? We may have a few questions just in general, since we still have about 9 minutes on the presentation time for you guys while Mr. Giome's looking that up. Currently, if you're going to determine, this said that you were going to use 12 VASH vouchers, do you anticipate using HUD vouchers for the remainder of units also to be able to pay? And therefore, what does that do to the options of whether you can select the candidate being local? Does that make it that you're going to use your lists?
That's a great question. Bill Brewer, for the record, Nevada Rural Housing Authority. Great question. First of all, I'd like to clarify that we're not an intimate part of this project.
You
We're
can do it at either place.
just a cheerleader.
Okay.
Go, you guys. Great job. But because we do have control of the vouchers for this area, we would work with them on the vouchers. It would depend on if they wanted additional vouchers. We could talk about that. The challenge with vouchers is once you cross that 12 voucher line, you kick in prevailing wage costs for the project. And so the cost to construct that would increase substantially because of that prevailing wage. And that would be something the owners would have to work out to see if they wanted to cross that line or not.
Can I add something? Eddie Holt from LCD Nevada. He's exactly right. Once you get over 20% of vouchers for a project, and we didn't plan on having more than the 12 VASH vouchers. Once you get over that 20, once you get to about 24, 25%, then federal law does bring in the Davis-Bacon, and we can keep the costs about 20, 25% lower if I don't have to breach that subject. So.
But what about the placement of the individuals? I'm trying to understand if you're going to, let's say you can, fortunate enough to actually fill it with only using 12 VASH vouchers, what's the methodology you're going to use then to select the other tenants? Just a general application and you'll screen them yourself? Who's going to screen and
again, that would be up
manage
to
the other non-12?
Excuse me. There would, in fact, Eddie and I were just talking about this earlier.
Could you push your button? It has to be green.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Eddie and I were talking about this earlier, and our board would have a committee that would do the screening and evaluate the tenants. And, okay, are you working? Can you prove you're working in Carson City? And you're a veteran, you're in Carson City, how can you prove that you're a veteran and that you're living in Carson City? And then what are your needs? And that would be the process that we anticipate going through.
Because you're only going to take the 12 VASH vouchers. You're not going to take additional vouchers and open up fair housing, other rules with HUD.
That's correct. And also, though, the same screening would go for all of the other units as well. Are you working in Carson City? Are you a veteran in Carson City? So forth.
Well, not the 12. The 12 vouchers will be done by you, right?
Correct. We'd have to
That's
administer the 12 vouchers.
Right, that's a different method.
So then you're going to use the same criteria in terms of income verification that you would use, that he would use. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I think that we're going to have to because we're anticipating a sliding scale of rents. And so if you have lower income people, you're going to have lower rents for them. And we don't anticipate the rents exceeding 30% of anybody's income. And in some cases, if they have no income, then there's no rent.
Then how do you pay for the ongoing unit costs for maintenance if you have
Well,
zero rent?
That is going to be.
Without a voucher,
That's
without a
going
HUD
to be,
voucher.
there's going to be other people paying rent. And then there's also going to be fundraising. We're a nonprofit and we will be out there fundraising.
Eddie Holt again, I should say that in the performa, the operating performa, the operating performa works from a 30% low income, up to an 80% workforce housing. The rents are pretty much average about 50% rent. He said 30, it's really about 50%. Okay, so the average is the 12 vouchers are usually 30 to 40% people. And then When I say percent of average median income in Carson City, I think it's around 68,000 right now. So you take that, 34% where it's at, and then you increase the scale, and we will have, just like we did at Richards Crossing, we'll have a professional property manager who understands affordable housing and transitional housing come in and help the committee with not only the selection of tenants, but the operating performance.
Anybody else have any other?
You
Mr. Jerome?
you kept mentioning veterans, and I know you said, obviously, as a nonprofit, that's your goal, but you also said you're going to open it to non-veterans. So you're saying that you're going to ask everyone if they're a veteran. So does that mean how are you going to decide how many veterans versus non-veterans get?
Well, if we build all 60 units and there's 60 veterans from Carson City, and there are 60 people from Carson City that are working here that are low income, I imagine we'd split it. But that's the best answer I can give you right now, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Bonkowski?
And your proposal has the land being conveyed from the city at no cost to your group. So give me your best argument on why we would forego sales proceeds for the taxpayers and convey the land at no cost, and if there was a cost to the land, what that would do to your financial pro formas.
I'd rather have Eddie answer that if I could, sir.
Brad, generally, this is, in this, trying to do an affordable housing project, I've got to look for an LTV of about 85% or less.
And for the record, LTV is loan to value.
Yeah, loan to value. And generally, if it's 70% or less, I can pretty much get any lender to do it. So that 70 to 86% is where HUD level is. You have to be 86% or less to even try to get federal funds, or to even get like home funds and HP funds. So my compression is if I had 700,000 pieces of land dedicated to the project, and the give up that we have is that we're going to put this in a term of affordability for 30 or 40 years. By getting AHP funds or home funds, it requires us to do so. So that's your guarantee by giving up the land. If I could take that 700,000 to a $4.8 million project, that gives me right there 12 to 13%. Okay, that gives me, and if I go out and get home funds, then I get closer to 80, 77%. That helps me finance the project. The project like this, to keep the rents down, to be able to afford a spread of 30% AMI to 80% AMI, to keep it down around 50, 55%, with the subsidies you got to have some equity in the project, and that would be the equity of the project. I would think that we are, as a Veterans Coalition, we're going to be owners of the project when it's done, and it's going to be a 30-year, 40-year, whatever the capital stack requires. There'll be capital stack issues, what they're going to require as an equity part of it. So in our RFP, we asked possibly where the land we got was donated, or maybe part of the land or a good part of the land was somehow donated, or maybe we could work on some discounts on will serves or things like that. Those all help the situation. Like I said, we as an owner can only put the rents down toward the operating formula will work.
Right, so you made an interesting comment, which is that you need 20 to 30% equity in the project. Where is your equity? In other words, what I'm getting out of this is that you want the city to donate the land, which you would then use at full market value as collateral for your equity. So is your group intending to put any equity into the project, or is it all financing plus donations of the land?
Most likely it's financing through donations, as well as donations. The equity would be the sweat equity that's put into it. Remember, if I go out and get a capital stack and I'm using AHP funds, home funds, that lending will not allow me to, and I put it in an affordability requirement for 30, 40 years, you cannot value this as a market rate project. So I don't get that benefit on any balance sheet or anything that we have. Even if we have to give up the project to another nonprofit or it turns over or something happens, we're handcuffed.
No, my comment was that the land, when you go to whatever financing source, they're going to look at that land and they're going to value that land at market value for
Oh, yeah,
collateral
that's true. That's true.
purposes.
Yes, that's
That
true.
was my comment.
Yes, that's true. That will help the equity part of the program.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify and make sure I understood, based on the sizing of these units, which are small, you're really anticipating this as a transitional living, not permanent living.
Generally, I would say that's transitional to probably no more than probably an 18-month perm.
Which is a
And
transition.
it's the long-term transitional, trying to get people, like you said, to, if they, try to work them to have jobs. Very similar to what we did with Richards Crossing. So,
Permanent housing, though. Okay. Oh.
Sorry.
Yes. Their timeline.
What's that?
They're just going to be questions, not general comments. Go ahead. They've had their 20 minutes. It's time to bring the other
20
guy
minutes is
in.
on the presentation.
Go.
Yeah, so now these are questions. How much are you on the community center component, because it's really not something we were necessarily looking for, on the community center component, on that sort of extra space, on the non-housing stuff, what percentage of the total dollar amount is going towards that? In other words, talk to me about why you think there's value in doing that versus our thought of trying to get as many affordable housing units as we can. I'm trying to translate how much the cost of that sort of community center and that counseling center, and those are admirable things, but if we're looking to maximize housing, I don't get the benefit there. So how much money are you spending on those sort of things that aren't related to housing?
the operating performer, I think, has 6% in it for basically social service. I don't have it in front of me, so it's been a month or a half, 2 months ago, so I wrote that operating performer, but somewhere in there. And that would be that we have to direct pay. There'll be some social services that are internal, just an internal group, like Natalie, who's not here tonight, who was VRS, basically would help out, those type of things.
Right, but a part of the loan, obviously, is going to be going to building things that aren't housing. I mean,
square
right, the community
footage
centers, the
percent.
square
There's gonna be
footage.
clubhouse amenity, just your capital stack funds, your HP, home funds, things like that will force you to have some amenity to your project. So yeah, I have to, whether I build a dog park or I build a wellness center inside or a exercise room in the clubhouse, those things are part of it.
And then you landed on 60 units. How did you come to 60 units? What was the decision behind stopping at 60 or only going to 60? Was it a financing thing? Was it a?
Natalie and the group, before I was even brought on board, had done some spot counts and some certain things. They looked at what might be the need. And the need basically came out to where they might need between 42 and 60 units. I just went with the concept proposal with 6 acres. 10 units is very open area in the project. I mean, usually multifamily or duplexes and triplexes are in a 15 to 16 unit density per acre. I'm trying to keep the land well used, but still have some little bit of open space so people aren't just crammed to each other like more of an institutional building is. So I was just trying to make best use of the land. I mean, what's going to happen when we do a market study and central needs assessment, we have to do both of them, come back and they go say that there's either not enough or there's too much. We had that with Richards Crossing. That's why we built what we built. Rather than building 60 units, we built 40 because that's what the central needs assessment told us. Once we have that, then we'll have a better feel for exactly what it is. We were just trying to put something in the performa. 60 units seems to fit. If I get many more units than that, yeah, I could probably make the performa work a little bit better. But really, do we have that need right away? Okay, that's the question. Do we really have that much of a need? So.
And then just looking over yours, unless I'm missing something, so please tell me, you're not anticipating children in this facility?
There could be families. There's, I know Natalie has talked about that, and I don't see any reason why there wouldn't be.
in a 320 square foot. Okay. You're not overly assuming children. Let me say
I
it
wouldn't say
differently.
large families, but I said, young parents with maybe 1 or 2 children for a 2-bedroom.
Okay. Any more?
My questions have been taken. By
Okay.
the smart ones to my right.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there's no more, we'll take presenter number 2, and I'll take public comment at the end of the second presentation, just so.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Tamar, do you know what the?
Perfect. Good afternoon. It is.
Not yet, but we're getting there.
I don't know. I saw the other day where your temperature there was like, you were 44 and we were 36. So I thought, whoa, they're cold.
It's cold, and I drove up yesterday because I didn't want to spend the night in Boise or Sacramento, because that's what happens when they shut that airport down all the time.
And that's where you end up. Yep. Okay. Are you?
Can you tell us the format, so 20 minutes presentation?
And then we'll do a question and answer period after your presentation. So you have 20 minutes for your presentation, and you'll go. And please identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Omar Afifi. I'm here with Palaseek. We're here to present on the affordable housing, workforce housing RFP. My partner here with me, Senator Mike Schneider, will go through the presentation momentarily, but I would like to start the presentation. I think a copy has been passed to members of the board. I moved here in 2017, and I noticed, I went to restaurants, I went to hotels, I went to casinos, and I've noticed a lot of seniors that do not that have to commute in and out of the city, and a lot of veterans that commute in and out of this Carson City from Dayton, from Reno, from other places because they cannot afford living here. I notice a problem with the veteran population, with other homeless population we have in the city. And I started talking to these people. I was talking to them in the casinos. I was talking to the people that work as waitresses and waiters, and a lot of them are seniors. and they all have the same problem, which is they cannot afford rent out here in good economy. Good economy is good, but sometimes with inflation, with the rent, with the rates, things get out of control. I drove around Carson City for about 6 months or so after we moved out here, and I know I've dealt with HUD for about 20 years or so, and I started looking for properties that would qualify as affordable housing. Came and met with some of these members of the board, came and met with local developers, with local city officials to explore the possibility of building affordable housing for the tenants, for the people that live here, the people that commute in and out of the city. And we failed once, twice, 3 times convincing the HUD. We met with the HUD about, probably 15, 16 times over 2 years. Carson City has a very special shape, I would say. A lot of the properties won't qualify for the QCT. We started communicating with HUD. We started attending the local meetings once a month here for workforce housing, affordable housing. And then me and my partner, Rob Joyner, we found a property here on Badai Airport. And we immediately contacted members of this board and contacted the city that we said this property is 90% included in qualified census tracts. 90% of this property is available. So I went to Mr. Bill Brewer, who was here presenting before me. I told him about it. I went to a couple other people, Eddie Holt here, that I saw him presenting earlier. I told him about this property and came and sat with them. First, I wasn't stupid. I got him to sign a non-disclosure agreement when I told him about the property. So they have a signed non-disclosure agreement when I told them, I like this property. I see this property as qualified property for us to build affordable housing. We came and met with these members of the board, and then we looked at the shape, we looked at the challenges. I started working with Lee, I started working with Public Works, talking to them about this property. We even got Washington, D.C. knows this property right now by name because we've talked to HUD in Washington, D.C. 6 or 7 times, just so they're very well familiar with the census in Carson City because of this reason. Anyway, to just give you, that was my history about why we selected this property and why this property in Carson City. We saw the vision of helping basically all the seniors. Everybody's welcome. I did not want to limit myself to a voucher program. I did not want to limit ourselves to a certain category. We said veterans are welcome, seniors are welcome, low income are welcome, and mixed income, people that actually work that are above the 80% or 60% are welcome if we were to develop any affordable housing in here. We wanted the people that actually work in here, electricians, plumbers, that commute from Dayton, that commute from Reno, to come out here and be able to live in Carson City and not go live somewhere else. And that's why we said, if you qualify, if you have some kind of a form of income, if you need any assistance, if you are working in Carson City, if you're living in Carson City, or if you want to live in Carson City where you work, you are welcome. If you're a disabled veterans, everybody's welcome to come out here, and we're ready to help everyone. So that was the vision for us for this. I have, between me and Senator Schneider, we have 50 years of combined experience of HUD working on HUD. During those 50 years, I developed 8 or 9, I shouldn't say developed, I built as a contractor 8 or 9 of the best affordable housing in Las Vegas where I lived. And Senator Schneider, I developed for him, where he developed, and I constructed one of his college villas, senior apartments in Carson City, which in Las Vegas, which I'll let him talk about it. But now I would like for Senator Schneider to introduce himself because I know the time is limited. We stop at 2:45, is that? 2:45, so we still have time.
Thank you. For the record, Mike Schneider. I live in Las Vegas permanently, and I have spent the last 30 years commuting in and out of Carson. And, I think that, to do projects like this, you need market studies. And I'll tell you a market study you don't need, and that is if you do housing for seniors. There are 10,000 seniors a day turning 65 in the United States. That has been going on for the last 15 years, and it's going to continue for the next 20. So you have all these seniors that are coming into this affordable housing market, and that's what I developed in Las Vegas. Has been very successful. And I guess what I'd like to say about that is, And you look around Carson City, as I looked around Las Vegas and Henderson and everything, and the people who work in the doctor's office, the receptionist in the doctor's office, the mechanic that repairs your car, the person that works in the Denny's where you go, or the Cracker Box here, or whatever. And, these people put their 35 years in of work, and they have no pension. They've made just enough money to make it by, raise their 2 kids, and pay the rent. And that's it. So when they hit 65 and they're broken down because they've been doing physical work all their life, they have exactly zero saved. I mean, half the people in the United States have no pension saved at all. There's nothing for retirement. And their Social Security will be $1,000 at best. And so that is a big market. I perceive that's a big market here. It is a huge market in the southern part of the state. It's a huge market in California too. So that's where my thrust is. And I know you don't even need a market study to figure that out. You build it and they will come. I mean, it's just that big of an issue. Hit the next one. And so we build and develop we do a lot of energy, and I received a lot of awards in the legislature for my work on energy, renewable energy, and those type of things. And when we built college villas, actually the state housing authority called me and said, "Would you like a solar energy grant? We have somebody," and they had a private entity that was putting up a solar grant. I said, sure. And so we took that and we put $350,000 of solar on our project. We anticipate that will be a big thing going forward in a project in Carson. And to let you know how that works, each resident has to benefit from that. I mean, we can't benefit. And I thought it's ridiculous to try to figure out how to put wires to 226 units. So what we said and what we did with that entity and with HUD is we will use that electricity to power the common areas and our office and recreation area, and then the outside of the buildings where you have lights. And then we reduce it and we adjust them semi-annually, adjust their rent and spread that over so everybody benefits from the free electricity we generate. So that's why I envision here in Carson, and Omar wants to do a mixed of adult and some seniors, and I think that works really well. I think that you can have different buildings there, different sections, and the playgrounds and all that, and the seniors benefit from that. So.
Yeah. So. Sorry, I got to get used to clicking the button on this one. So when we came and met with HUD here in 2017, told them about this property, told them we want to build it, they said, we want new blood, we want fresh blood. It's the same 5 entities in Nevada, not just in northern Nevada, in Nevada that comes and apply. We went through the process with them. We went through the application with them, the credits and everything. And they asked me about my qualification. Obviously, Mike has developed a very large affordable housing that was very successful in Las Vegas that I helped design and build for him. It was a design-build project. And so they asked me about my qualifications. And even though I do not own any single one of these, but I've developed 12 or 13 of the most successful affordable housing. They range from small to huge. We have high-rise in Las Vegas that I designed and built for Community Development Program Center of Nevada. We have the ones that we built for, the one we built for Senator Mike. We have other ones we built for Frank Hawkins. We have the ones we built for the NAACP as part of the program. And I designed and built all these, and they were all very successful projects. And we talked to our partners. RHF is one of the largest 501(c)s in the United States that does affordable housing. And they, at the time of the proposal, they were not ready to engage. After the proposal and after the shortlisting, they said, we would love to do something in Carson City, would love to help out. Community Development Program Center of Nevada in Las Vegas said, we would love to go and help you guys out. We want to be a partner with this program so we can bring a lot of horsepower, a lot of resources, a lot of proven track record of affordable mixed income housing to Carson City. And just like HUD said, we need fresh blood. We can bring this fresh blood without bombarding the city, with keeping the local presence, with keeping my local presence, with keeping with housing the local people of Carson City, the people that want to live here, want to raise families here. It'll be a family, and it'll be a style, not a Las Vegas building. It'll be a Carson City entity and Carson City building. Obviously, you've seen my projects in the proposal. The Yale Keys, the Senator Richard Bryan, the Luther Mack properties, all these properties that we've done. I'm going to show you some pictures of some of the stuff that I envision that we're going to do a mix of lesson learned, what we learned in these projects, we're going to try to imply for this one here in Carson City, because I remember Brad told me we're going to need somebody who's a seasoned veteran. This is our first endeavor at this, and we need a seasoned veteran, and that's why we're going to bring those seasoned veterans to help us out ourselves. I've done 12 or 13 of those. Senator Mike developed a huge one in Las Vegas or Henderson, and we're going to bring all that into this project with us. This is a picture of College Villas. I'm not sure if I can make this a little bigger, but let me see. Yep, you can do that. So that's Senator Mike Schneider. You want to talk about the project a little bit? But just we
Thank
have
you.
8 more minutes left. So.
Again, for the record, Mike Schneider. This was when it was first completed, so it doesn't have the landscaping going in and all that. And if you click the next one, Omar, you'll see we have a outdoor balcony, or not balcony, but stairway, a metal stairway going up outside. And we now have vines growing up. Told that we planted those small and let them grow up, and it really softens it. But we won a lot of awards for this project, and the mayor of Henderson, Jim Gibson, he loved it. He's a Clark County commissioner now, but he loved it. And they had a real problem in Henderson next to this land where they had an old trailer park. It wasn't a mobile home park; it was a trailer park, and it was creating so much work on social services. I mean, the fire department was there all the time, the police and everything else. And anyhow, because of this project, they totally shut down and moved away. And we were the impetus for them to move out. But this, we are very proud of the work we did with that. And anyhow, that's it. Yes.
So I want to show you some of the stuff that, sorry, I got to learn this thing. I got to show you some of the apartments, the affordable housing. This is a mixed income, Donna Luis, that I've done. I've designed it, I built it. And part of your RFP says that we have to do something about, we don't want just, the bare minimum for these tenants just because it's affordable housing. We want something really good. And this is an affordable mixed income housing, very similar to the setup you have. It is a 4-story building. And look in the middle, you see that carport. We were the first ones to put this. It's considered a high-rise structure, that carport that has solar in the middle. People pay zero bills at the end. And it's not just for the lobby, because when we built it, we thought we're just going to do the common areas, the garage, the lighting on the outside, and have the tenants pay their bills. And then we found out that we're generating a lot more electricity than anybody is using. And then these tenants are getting a 50 cents electricity bill at the end of the month, even though they leave their AC on in Las Vegas in the summertime. And we did this 100%. We're even surpassed the net zero on this. And this is still an affordable housing. It's not a luxury home. It is affordable housing where people are not paying much. And we still put that array that we designed, we built ourselves for the affordable housing. That's the same property you're looking at. We had a lot. This is another one that was just a very simple, single story, very minimal landscape. We were trying to be fiscally conservative on this project. The Senator Richard Bryan Senior Apartments. This one was not mixed income, so it was senior apartments that was also considered affordable. It's part of a different HUD program with community, a clubhouse for the seniors, and all kinds of activities. And on this one specifically, we had a program for like a bonus program for the veterans to apply, the senior veterans to apply. So what we're saying here, we do a lot of, this is a really good quality work. The Yale Key Senior Apartments, they're also one of the most beautiful apartment homes in Las Vegas, but they're still affordable income. These are entirely low income. They went through the low income housing program, so they're entirely low income. They were not mixed income. So the fact that we're very flexible is a good thing, because, the fact that we're very flexible in our approach. If we go through a HUD program through our own finances, if we go through our partners with RHF or a Community Development Program Center, or any of these partners to develop this, we can go with the program that Carson City needs. We can do phases, we can do very aggressive and go build it all at once. We can do multiple phases, and we're open for all of ideas. And like I said in our RFP, we're gonna conduct a meeting with the entire, we're open for public, where we invite everybody out here to this facility and talk to them and say, what are your needs? Just like I've attended a couple of meetings in Reno and talked to all these people. But one thing we want to bring up is these facilities that we envision, just again with the affordable housing, we're going to have very smart buildings. We're going to have energy management systems. I'm not talking luxury, folks. We're talking about very minimal stuff that can be implemented into these buildings. People buy on Amazon, seniors, mixed income, low income, they all have phones. They buy through Amazon. They use Uber. We're gonna have Uber in the building. We're gonna have, Senator Mike, you wanna talk about your idea for if we do a senior apartments?
Well, no matter what is built there, senior or family, the key is it's not a regular apartment complex anymore. You can't just build regular. You have to put everything in for the 21st century. Recycle your trash, right? And you gotta have different recycle, because everybody orders now off of Amazon, and you have these large boxes you have to recycle and break down, recycle. And then people are working, so the Amazon deliveries, the Smith's Food King deliveries, we're gonna have a system that's set up so there's a lockbox room where the deliveries come in and are placed there. So when the people come home, well, they can see on their phone it's being delivered, but it isn't being dropped in front of their apartment. It's being delivered to a secure room that we control. And we have to have that going forward, because everybody buys their food now off the internet, and they do all their shopping off the internet. So we have to be part of that. And another key thing is medical. And we perceive that we will have a room where we can do medical every week, and people can come in and get their blood pressure and diabetes testing and all that every week, and we can help reduce the costs on the hospital, because, everybody goes to the emergency room. Carson City's paying. The people who live here are paying the high prices. We perceive that supplying medical service there, and what you're doing is you contract with the city or an individual doctor, where they come in and they're there for a half a day or once or twice a week, and they're just there, and the people can come down and use that, and they can get all their testing done right there. They can even draw blood and send it in. All this stuff helps reduce the cost to Carson City.
And we listed some testimonials from the tenants that live in currently in our development. This is what we envision right now for this, is 160 units. Could be either done on phases or could be done all at once. Like I said, when we talk about flexible, we're talking about two-story. I think two-story would fit the Carson City apartments that we've seen, so we don't change the overall look. We called it Carson Arms. We're gonna do wings just like we've done on a couple of these projects that I showed you earlier. I could go back later on and show you how it looks in real life, but this is a rendering of what would it look like. It would be 20 units on each wing. Obviously, we have different unit sizes. We have the 2-bedroom, a couple of 3-bedroom, and we have the 1-bedroom units. And then this is a different view of them. We're gonna have the recreational area, the medical room, kitchen, exercise, all that stuff built in, smart building, energy management system, all be applied into these buildings, just like we've done it in different ones. We did check the property as far as the challenges. We talked about them in our response to the RFP. We're aware of the wetland area in the middle of the property. We're aware of the challenges. We're aware of the elevation of the property. And we have looked at it, and we talked to your city planners, we talked about to our own design team about these challenges, and we feel like we could very comfortably overcome them. We listed a bunch of stuff here that, some perks for people who live here that we can provide, connection to your smartphones. It'll be very user-friendly. People could live there very comfortably and be very comfortable. One thing we wanted to bring up before the end, before we finalize, which is the resources we have to build this project. Like I was talking about, HUD is very familiar with this project. They told me how, a HUD member, without mentioning his name, said, "How is Carson City putting this RFP out to? This is the one that you told them about. It's going out to bid." I said, "Yes, people will be bidding against me, even though I told Carson City about this property." But HUD is willing to work with us. I mentioned in our proposal that banks are aware of this and are aware of the mortgage that we're going to be seeking for this. We've met with local construction companies, and I mentioned two of the largest 501Cs in Nevada that have done this over and over. We have good relationship with them. They're ready to move on this property if we want to move forward. And for the lack of time, we put a couple of quotes for you from Ronald Reagan and Dr. Martin Luther King here. I'm not sure if we have time to. I see Brad looking at the clock, so I'm.
20
I'll stop.
seconds. Yeah.
We're done. We're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have questions? I'll start with a couple while they're working on it. So do you envision this to be permanent housing or transitional combination?
So in our response to the RFP, we envision a permanent housing for these, and it's at least 50 years as part of the requirement that we agreed on in our.
There'll be
response to
no ending someone's tenancy at 18 months or anything like that?
No.
It'll naturally
RFP. Correct.
have that people move out, but you
That is
are
correct.
envisioning permanent housing.
Yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned, I just wanted to double check, you're envisioning this project to incorporate solar?
Yes, we are, ma'am.
Yes. And then I want to talk a little bit about, do you anticipate taking HUD vouchers? And one of the concerns that we are expressing here is that we want to make sure we're taking care of our own and not really opening it up and here moves in, I'll just be nice to you, here comes 100 people from Las Vegas to take these.
Sounds like the caravan.
There you go.
Yeah,
So how do
voucher
you see
program,
it functioning with the way you're going to finance the project?
with a voucher program, we can have somebody moved from Carson City, from New York City out here because he saw an opening. And that's why we went to that event in Reno where we spoke, and nobody likes a voucher program. And I'm not a big fan of a voucher program, and I'll do my best. I have to abide by what guidelines HUD gives me, but I will do my best and Senator Schneider's best to avoid having any voucher program on this.
Then we can control it. Okay, thank you.
Well, I mean, that means you're not going to take HUD funding.
Vouchers.
Vouchers, we're not going to take, you don't have to take vouchers on all HUD programs. There are certain HUD programs that require to take vouchers, there's certain HUD programs that do not abide, but it depends on your percentage. So if we can make the percentage work, and that's why I went for the 160, because I think the cutoff is 149 to avoid vouchers. Now,
And I'd like to say one other thing, that the key to any, development like this, to any apartment complex, the key is management, right? And management is where they qualify the tenants. And, the tenants have to be able to pay, because we're not a nonprofit here. This is, if we can't make our mortgage every month, we're gonna lose the deal, right? So we have to qualify good people in. Now, they can't make more than, like on senior low-income housing, they can't make more than 60% of the median income for the whole valley, right? So, and you're audited by HUD every year. So with people coming in with vouchers or any of that, that's how you weed all that out. I mean, it truly is in the management.
Yeah, I do. Do you mind if I go or you? So have you, in your other projects, had experience with HUD funding?
Yes, as a matter of fact, with College Villas, that's a big project.
Yeah.
$26 million, 226 units. That's a real big project, and that was HUD funding. And let me tell you what, we started that during the recession. And so we were working with HUD day and night, and we received TCAP funds on that, and that was money to offset, because when you do the HUD, you get these bonds that have to sell off. And the bonds were going, because the money market was crashed so bad, bonds were going at, 26 to 30% discounts. And that means now we have less money to build with, so in came TCAP money to offset some of that, because Nevada was designated by the Obama administration as a difficult to develop area, which it truly was. There was nothing being built. And so the money came in and we got a lot of that and to offset. So we worked real close with HUD on doing those projects.
And so in your proposal, if I read it right and summarized it right, you're looking at the majority of units being at about 80% of average market, but a number above, then about an equal number above and an equal number at the 50% or below. Is that a fair representation?
That's a fair representation. However, the HUD requirement is for 60%, not 80%.
For seniors, correct?
For seniors or for any low-income housing, to qualify, you have to be at the 60% margin. Now, when we pulled up the census income in Carson City, believe it or not, it's higher than other part of the valley. And that's why we believe with the 60%, we can make a certain number work with the census here that complies with the RFP and complies with the HUD. But I can't say 100% it will be over the 80% because we have to remain at the 60% cutoff if we were to go with the HUD program.
Okay. It's a big project. I mean, it's, you're estimating $18 million and do you, obviously you've done bigger projects, so you apparently feel like you can do it. Otherwise you wouldn't be here, but I'd just like to hear your thoughts on funding it. And if I had my druthers, I would have you fund it right from the beginning. I guess you could phase it, but I would like to see it as a continual phase if we do that, because I think the numbers, in my mind, the numbers help you in terms of the voucher program and the total unit numbers, and that's why you came to that number of 160. So.
For the record, Mike Schneier, this project will probably be phased, and why that is, it'll be just a rolling project,
Right.
but in phases. And why that is because of the HUD funding. Because as you're closing up here, and you have to fund back here, and HUD's releasing money to you, they are not releasing all that money, and it strangles you up here on the front end. And you have to have so much rented before you can go on. And that's it's just the funding mechanism. And that's what causes it to be funded. You front end fund it, build that section, and then you roll back through it. And that's how you do those projects. And, like College Villas was such a large development, and we hit a snag, which really ran us down, and that was with the state. They wanted more shear on the outside because it was 4-story, and they wanted a different shear on the outside of the buildings, and that held us up 45 days. And 45 days on a large construction project's a long time.
So how long did it take you on that project to finish the whole 226?
It was,
2-year, 3-year?
yeah, it was somewhere 18 to 24 months we were finished.
And one thing I wanted to mention as far as the HUD funding, so HUD would be obviously the ideal source. We, on the response to the proposal, we listed going through Sterling Bank or somebody else if we don't qualify we've been working with on this property, and they've seen it, they've seen aerial footage of it. We also, that's why we rely on the third party. Both these entities, I mentioned 501Cs, they're almost as big as banks here in Nevada. They've been doing this for 50 years. They expressed that they would be willing to also jump in if we want them to jump in, but we feel we're comfortable without having them. But part of that RFP says that you envision the winning bidder would be a for-profit entity with a non-for-profit entity going at the same time, and that's why I'm bringing this up, that they will be willing to fund something, we would be willing to fund something, and hopefully the bond program with HUD would cover something else.
I just wanted to hear you say that you felt like the project is doable as you've presented it with the amount of money that you have estimated it to cost, and that you're not, dreaming or reaching for the stars. And it sounds like you can verify to me that you believe you can make this happen.
Correct. Now, if this is going to be an affordable project, it has to be HUD funding. If we have to go to a regular institutional commercial bank, now it's market rate housing.
Yeah.
And I don't think you want that.
That's
And,
definitely not what we want.
right, and we don't want that. I mean, we're in the business of doing the HUD stuff and the low income, although we advertise it as affordable housing, we don't call it low income. And so that's what we want to do, and the timing on it, you know, it's not designed yet, obviously, we're not in the hard drawings, right? So we have to do that, you got to go through planning, zoning, you got to get your permits, everything else.
I'm not asking about that. I'm just,
Okay.
I'm really trying to focus on, I want you to tell me that you believe you can make this project happen.
Right, we can make
The
it
amount of
happen,
money that you're talking about here in terms of low-income housing.
correct, we can make it happen, and it'll happen with HUD, and it'll probably roll out, yeah, I don't know if you want to hear this or not, but HUD is not going to fund that in 2020. HUD is going to fund this in 2021. That's just the timeline that it takes. And the HUD money, the state housing money for 2020 is probably already taken right now, especially for this area.
So why would you put 2021 in your proposal then?
2021?
So when I brought it up, when I brought this RFP up to Mike Holliday with HUD, they thought we were submitting 2020, we're submitting on the 2020 May, and I said I will. And then when it went out for bid, and then the RFP came out for saying it's going to be in December, when the decision will be made, typically by December or January, the May submittal would end by December or January. So we're right at the cutoff to actually make this happen for May, but we cannot guarantee that we will make the submittal or the draw for May. That's
Okay,
why.
well, he's saying you're not going to, you're saying you may not, and your proposal says that you will. So I'm just trying to figure out where you are.
Yeah, Mike Schneider, for the record, change the proposal.
Okay, thank you.
It just physically can't be done.
Okay,
And just for the record, I mean, you know, Omar started working on this months and months ago, and we get to this point, and you got to back the times up now.
Mr. Barrett?
Thank you. 4 large building on, how many acres we're talking about? It looks a little crowded to me. How does it feel to you?
So we learned in the RFP about the emergency center or the fire station, but with a 6-point acre based on the 30 unit per acre, we feel like we still can make the cutoff with 24 units or so per acre. We should be comfortable. It should not be too crowded.
Secondly, I heard your talk at the beginning about talking to people here and the need, and I don't think anybody here thinks that there's not a need, but 160 units is quite a few units. You're sure there is the need for this?
You know, every one of these buildings that we've done in the past, they all fill up within days, and we don't even finish construction, and people are banging on our door trying to apply. That's
I figured.
the fact of the matter.
Could you tell me about these managers? They'll be paid for out of the ongoing revenue,
The ideal scenario would be live-in manager in the units themselves.
but with a knockoff on the price?
Correct.
Yeah. Finally, on your solar, could you say a little bit more about what's in the back of your minds on this? You've done it before, so you probably have the idea of how you do it, rooftop, whatever.
So I'll let Senator Mike speak about this, but I think the best and the easiest approach would be carport solar on these. Carport solar, they're very efficient, they're very maintainable. I think roof solar with wind speed and all that becomes very costly to the building, and the gentleman earlier spoke about, Stacy, about the cost, can we make it happen? The roof solar would be a little more costly, but I think carport solar would be a lot more efficient.
And just one thing, I would like to address the gentleman's question about the density. So College Villas was 4 stories, and it's on 5 acres. And I was approved by the city of Henderson for 5 stories, so it went up to about 275 units. And when we started, before we started construction, we had to build with prevailing wage down there, of course. And once you hit 5 stories, you went to commercial rate. So we were under residential prevailing wage at 4, but on the 5th story, you went to commercial prevailing wage, and that's the wage the guys that build the big hotels down there get. And so we just had to cut the thing off to get our units to qualify. And I went around, we have really nice homes that run about 450,000 around the project, and I went and knocked on every door and sat their kitchen table and showed them what we were doing. And I was gonna cut views off from a lot of people because it sets up high on a hill like that. You can see the entire valley. And I told them they weren't gonna have views anymore, but we were gonna do this nice project and everything. We had 100% commitment from the community surrounding us.
Supervisor Bonkowski.
How long do you think you would need for your financing commitments? So at what point would you know that you're going to be able to obtain HUD financing, or you would have to go to conventional financing?
That's a good question. In the second half of 2020, once we got the plans all done and everything, and we'll present it then, we'll know what our costs, our hard costs are, and we'll present the project to HUD then. And I really, to be perfectly honest, I don't want to go to conventional financing on this. It's HUD or nothing, or you're doing, I think you're doing Carson a disservice.
So that brings up another thought before I get to the rest of my questions. So your proposal asks the city to convey the land for $10,000 plus the cost of the transfer tax.
Yes.
So we commit to doing that. Is there going to be a covenant in the development agreement that returns the property to the city if you can't get what I'm hearing is HUD financing and can't move forward with the project?
I would think so, and the way I look at this is, it's just not our project, we're a partner with the city. And we're a partner here together, and we don't want to do it unless we get HUD financing. You don't want to do it because you need the low-income housing. And we're looking for the city also to, help us out on all this zoning and all the permits and everything. We don't want to be held up forever on permits. So it's a partnership that we want to do. It's not just us against the city or something like that. We don't want to, it's not take the ball and hide it. It's working together, okay?
And just, Brad, just so you know, when we looked at this, I think this property, we found out a lot of developers that have taken a lot of land from Carson City and the state of Nevada, over 1 million acre from the state of Nevada, and promises of developing them for affordable housing and whatnot, and they ended up not doing so. So we're okay if we have a clause in there that we do not qualify, that the land will, and I guess we lose the 10 grand back or something. We lose it, we forfeit that money. We're okay with that clause, but it has to be, I think, reasonable schedule with the city. I mean, I'll do my best for the May draw with HUD that's coming up here in 5 months. But like Senator Mike said, if we don't make that, we shouldn't be held liable that you forfeit the money by June 1st if we're not approved by May. It can go up to the second half of 2020.
So if it ends up being a 2021 draw instead of a 2020 draw, then what does that push your construction schedule out for C of O? Would that be April of 2022 then, instead of April of 2021? Is it a full year, or would it be less than a year?
So I'll let Mike speak if he wants to talk about this one, but what I envision, if that's the case, we finish all the entitlements, we finish all the planning, all the design, everything 100%. We keep going with, they call them non-crucial milestones, which we continue with them with our own financing, and then if we may have to wait 2 or 3 months if we have to go to a 2021 draw with HUD.
And
so that will shrink the schedule a little bit, because now that the stuff, while we're waiting, we can finish the design, we can finish all the entitlements, all the planning, everything else will be worked on during that period.
And is the answer the same when Mike was talking about the rolling phases for construction, and that the cost is front-loaded and you're waiting for reimbursement? Do you anticipate any delays in the project because of the financing, especially pertaining to getting occupancy and getting your occupancy rate up to meet your HUD requirements?
I don't anticipate any delays unless there'd be something happen to the construction industry in this area. You know, I don't see any delays at all. You know, there's an old saying, if when you're in the development business, if you've got the cash, you're pouring cement, you know? So as soon as we get the approval from HUD, we're going.
Spoken like somebody from Clark County. Because up here, even if you have the money, you're not pouring concrete if there's snow on the ground.
Yeah.
So I guess, let me rephrase the question. What I'm looking at is that you said that the April 2021 date is not reasonable and we need to change that in the proposal. But what are we changing it to based on all of the things that we've talked about? The HUD financing, potential occupancy, absorption rates. Give me your proposed date change.
Okay. Well, the proposed date would be in next year when HUD approves this, because we're going to be on the list, we're going to be working with HUD. So it's actually this next year when the approval comes in from HUD.
No, I'm talking about C of O.
Well, certificate of occupancy, you know, we're gonna roll through the project, so you're gonna have occupancy within a year, for sure.
So your April of 2021 for certificate of occupancy is
Right.
still
Then you're
valid?
not
Or do you
changing
want
the
to
date.
make that September of 2021? That's what
I think.
we're
we
so
should-
many days from
Yeah,
HUD approval.
2021, excuse me, you know,
Right.
I'm getting, it's gonna be 2020, and then 2021, there we go. Yeah.
But they're saying the CFO would be pushed instead of April 22, because right now we have it April 2020. April 2021, so it would be pushed to either April of 2022 or would be pushed to like September or December of April. And I think
21.
December of 2021 would be more realistic if we say HUD or nothing. And, you know, we've developed, I was a partner a long time ago in a for-profit, non-affordable housing. And if we want to go that route, then we have a lot more freedom if we say HUD or nothing to help out the city and for us to be able to get some kind of subsidy on our mortgage, and we go HUD or nothing, then I think pushing it to December of 2021 would be a lot more realistic if we're saying HUD or nothing.
Well, I don't think it has to be HUD or nothing. I just don't think it can be conventional.
Right.
I mean, if your partner can come up with cash
Right.
as a nonprofit, then I'm fine with that too. It has to be affordable housing.
Right. We understand that.
So I've already received some phone calls and one in-person meeting with residents of the single-family houses to the immediate north.
Okay.
Concerned about a two-story project being built, blocking their views, plus the density, impacts on traffic, all the normal issues that come up anytime you try to build a development. So if you can tell me a little more, I know, Mike, you said that you personally knocked on doors for your Vegas project. What would your plan be for the houses to the north, which are the ones that are really going to be impacted? And how far into that development would you contact the property owners? Or?
Well, you know, before you go to hardline drawings, you're gonna contact them right away. You're gonna take the proposed plans, big set of plans, and you're gonna take it over and, you know, knock on doors, especially the people in the first row of housing there that backs up to it. And you're gonna show them how it will or will not impact them. And, you know, the key, as I found on developments, is something, you know, you gotta tell them something's gonna be built there regardless. It's not gonna be vacant forever. There's something that's gonna be built there. And the first proposal to be built there is always the best. It truly is. Because you shoot this one down and you go down the road another 3 or 4 years, somebody else is coming back and it's gonna be 4 stories. That's just what happens. And I've seen it over and over. I've been in the real estate business for a long, long time. And over again, that always happens. So the first proposal is always the best. But if you lay it out properly and you show them that there's not really going to be any windows looking into their backyards and things like that, And then you buffer it with landscaping along there, back with the pine trees or whatever, you buffer it with that. And that's what you have to do. You have to, and then have to leave them with a set of plans. And, it's just knocking doors with something I'm good at.
We did outreach for another project out here, and we had to put a microwave tower, and they all challenged me, and they all said, we're not gonna do this, and we did the outreach with the homeowner association, which we plan on doing. We did the outreach we set up food and things for the partners and the community members to come and the city council to come and visit with us. And we did all this on the tower, but when it actually came to, they were told that you have to file something to stop us from doing a microwave tower. Nobody ended up doing so, but initially everybody complained and called the city and whatever, but the microwave tower ended up being built, and they were satisfied, and we told them that your rates will go up if you don't want to allow NV Energy to put a microwave tower in that, and they all said, we're okay with it. We're okay with the microwave, and nobody notices it, but for some reason, the neighbors initially complained, so.
My final question to you is that one of our options as a board is to deny both proposals and put the property on the market just for sale, so that it will generate some funds that we can use for possibly other purposes. So give me your best argument on why we should convey the land to you for $10,000 plus the cost of the transfer taxes, and how that benefits Carson City, as opposed to us selling the property and using the proceeds for some other purpose.
I believe the airport is not going to expand to that area. I believe you have a lot of problems with the homeless population, and I believe you have a lot of problems with the people coming in and out of the city every day and not living here. And we believe with this building and this property, you will stop a big portion of that bleeding. And it may sit for a year or two till somebody sells it and till somebody buys it or put a realistic offer. And we don't see the airport in Carson City or any major entity expanding to that property. So we believe that your best option right now and your fastest option to take advantage of this property would be to actually allow us to utilize it for affordable housing. Mike, you want to add to this?
Well, that's a call I can't make for you. You're the committee that does that. It's your decision.
Right, that's why I said just give me your best argument.
Okay. I guess it is, again, what do you want to do? How much housing do you want to impact here? Affordable housing. How much do you want to put in the community? How much do you need to put in the community? And you really know that. And I'm telling you, you could build all of it senior housing and fill it up. It would be full. And so it's just, if you have X number of acres at your disposal, okay, here in Carson City, how much of it do you want to sell and how much of it do you want to develop for affordable housing? And I think that's the call you have to make. And if you're at this position, I would say you've pretty much made your decision that you need some housing. And it's like, I know when they were building, you need schools here also. And I told Mayor Bob a few years ago, I said, he said how expensive they were and everything. I said, go to BLM. Ask them for a piece of land. They'll give you the land to build a school, and it reduces your cost a lot. And I've done that in Las Vegas, and a lot of our schools are built on BLM land. They just give it to us. So, and obviously we need a lot of schools down there. We have over 300 of them now, and so here in Carson, you need the housing. And I don't know how much land you have at your disposal, but it's a call you've already preliminary made. Let's build some housing. And we can do it. That's not the problem. We can get it done under HUD. And so it's your call now. We can get the job done.
So my question that I have left is, just to verify, so let's say HUD whatever, takes a year for you to get the funding source. You have the wherewithal, though, to draw the plans and do all the preliminary work. You have the actual financial wherewithal to push all that project portions through before you have a HUD approval.
Right,
I just want to,
we can do the soft costs,
okay, you can.
the front end soft costs. You know, that's not the issue.
Okay.
The issue against financing. And let me say, since if we do this project with you, that we're partners, and you probably have a neighbor that works for the state housing authority, you know, that they're in charge of some of that HUD money. You know, that's how that stuff works, okay?
Great.
Talk about a seasoned veteran, we got a seasoned veteran.
There you go. Do we have any more questions from up here? Okay, we're going to just take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll let the other group come back in and have public comment too. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. Perfect timing?
Sure as I can.
Mr. French, Carson City, Nevada, Madam Chair and Supervisors. This has been a real eye-opener for me. I really am for affordable housing. I have a gut uncomfortable about HUD. The idea that everybody would perhaps be picked by HUD and then, or have been on a list and then come from anywhere, might take the selection option as far as the community using use of the land for people that are already working here. So I do think that the control might roll in a bad way, is the best way to put that. I don't feel that the type of density that the one, the PEC, PALAPEC program or proposal is really something that would be something I'd want next door. And it's not because I don't want to have places for people to live. It just doesn't suit my sense of the continuance of a neighborhood. It's a little too institutionalized look to it. Well, I think that the Veterans Village Coalition Group has a sense of community that's here, and that while each individual that presented has done their due diligence and come and talked to people and has made observances that a lot of us have, that there is a need for housing for people that work here. They're having to bus in or transport in from other areas because they can't afford to live here. I like the idea of transitional living in some cases, that from one set of housing to develop into another, I don't like the idea of you only have so much time to live in a certain area and then you're booted out for the next person to slip in. It's not a pair of bowling shoes type situation. People should either, if they need to live there longer than a certain amount of time because they can't establish housing in the area otherwise, that's good. And I'm hoping that the project that's for the Veterans Village type deal would afford that. HUD situation and the density of the other proposal is just uncomfortable for me, and I'll have a chance to look that over and see exactly why after seeing more of the written part. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Please state your name for the record and make sure that it's green around the ring.
My name is Vincent Shantz. I have a cold, so my voice is not very good. But I live at 819 Marsh Road, which is precinct 309. I'm on the other side of, I'm on the east side of Prison Hill, so I'm almost a neighbor. My statement is more along the line, not a statement of not in my backyard, because I do think that the property is appropriate for the proposed idea that we're talking about. It's more for, I would say it's more of an, what I think is appropriate for Carson City. Yes, we're not no longer a rural county, but we're almost a rural county. We're certainly not Wausau or Clark. And it seemed to me like the basis of the getting started or the introduction to the idea of size about, well, how many people or residents do we need, our local current market, current population. Now, I understand that any affordable housing project of any size will probably be filled up, because that's the nature of the beast. But what appeals to me is not the height, the lower height of the Carson City Veterans Group, the lack of what I think is more of an appropriate amount of density. If the city wants a little bit more density, a little bit more people, I'm sure that project could probably be increased in size, but that I don't think that the larger project is what the area needs and, or would be the best use of it. Well, I guess that's my statement.
Thank you, Vince. Do we have any more public comment? Mary Jane?
Hi, Mary Jane, Human Services Manager. And after listening to both proposals, I just have some comments and some information I'd like to share. And one of them is in our 2019 point in time count, which is done in January each year. So it's almost a year old and changes every day. But in our 2019 point in time count, in rural Nevada, in all of rural Nevada, there was only 10 veterans that were counted as homeless and only 2 here in Carson City. And so I wanted to share that information. Also, with transitional housing, when you have transitional housing, you really need case management. And some was identified for the veterans, but anyone else in transitional housing also needs that case management, because the idea is to transition into permanent housing, and they usually need some guidance in doing that. And then the other comment that I wanted to make was our division with the city also has 5 different housing grants that we're able to use as well. 3 of those 5 are HUD, so we have HUD guidelines also, but we also have agreements with our surrounding counties. And just as far as where you became homeless is what county should be rehousing you if possible, unless there's a tie to that community, meaning the kids are enrolled in school, they're working there, something like that. So we do have that flexibility with even our HUD grants. But I bring that up because what I don't know is there was comments made about a certain number of the housing choice vouchers, and they can't go over that. So if there's 12 housing choice vouchers, can any of our assistance programs also assist, or is that 12 for any type of program? That I don't know. And I think that was all my comments.
Thank you. Any questions for Mary Jane? Mary Jane, so just general question. I'm trying to kind of go back into housing projects and things that we've been approving over this last year or so, and I'm trying to recall the project on Hot Springs Road, and I think the cross street is Pine, that's in the process of getting built right now. Was that one a veterans preference facility?
I heard it was for veteran housing, yes.
Okay. Can you remember how many units, you guys, that we had on that one? It's a lot. It's a lot.
60, the total project is 61 units.
Yeah.
And when it was presented at the, I learned about it at the congressional briefing that housing projects do each year. It wasn't identified on what percentage was for veterans or if it was all focused on that, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I was just trying to get in my mind. Need. Thank you so much. Is there any other public comment? Okay, then I'll bring it back up here for discussion. We have a couple of different ways we could approach this. We can each discuss the pro and con of each project as you see it. We can do like we do appointments to boards where each of us says which one we're voting for. So we have options. Do you guys have a preference? Mr. Giammi?
I have a question. I'd like to maybe have us talk to staff from board, regardless of who we pick, as to some things we want to ensure are in the final agreement. So I think we can do that before we pick, because regardless of who we pick, there are things that I want to make sure are in the negotiated agreement that staff is gonna, so I would like to start there, because then we're not, it's sort of neutral. And then the other thing was, are we getting a briefing from Todd about something, or are we not?
No.
Okay. So I'll start then. I think in my mind, it's critical that there's either a deed restriction or covenant on the land that it is used for affordable housing, and if it's not, it comes back to the city. We shouldn't be giving up our asset for non-affordable housing. So, that, however that has to be written by staff, I think that's important. And then to go along with that would be to maximize the number of affordable housing units by definition that are in there, understanding that, some market value units might have to be in there to make it a viable project. But as you do in the negotiation, I want to make sure we're maximizing the number of affordable housing units relative to AMI, whether it's 80% or 60, and that there's a variable mix in there. To the extent that it's legally possible, I want to prioritize Carson City residents. And so I'll just say that broadly, that way staff can work on doing that in a way that is as legal as possible. And finally, I'd like to have,
That was a good way.
well, it should be fully legal, not as legal as possible.
Yeah,
That's probably, yeah, I've got the lawyers struggling. It's fully legal, not as legal as possible. I would also like to not limit the use of Carson City-based vouchers. So I'd like it to be, as Mary Jane said, so that if we have vouchers that aren't HUD vouchers, that there's, I don't want to tie your hands. I as much use as possible of non-federal based vouchers. So if we have local vouchers that become available, I'd like to have the management company not restrict the use of those. So that's mine, regardless of whether it's CCVV or Paliseek.
Yeah, I think I would just add on the clawback provision on the land, that it should also include language that the land comes back to the city if the project doesn't get built. Not just affordable housing, but if
Right.
any project doesn't get
Doesn't
built.
come to fruition.
Yeah,
Mr. Barrett?
both what they said and of course, if there's a price for land, it should be refunded at that juncture. And that just come back to us if we choose the one where we are getting 10 grand, we gotta give it back. You know what I'm saying?
Well, they actually generously said that they would forfeit that.
Forfeit it.
I don't care what they said. I don't believe we do that. At any rate, that's the only thing I would add.
Well, we can talk about that. I think they forfeit it if it doesn't come to fruition because they weren't able to obtain the financing. Then I think that was part of the questions on the wherewithal for the soft costs. That's a
I
risk.
understood what was being said and
Okay.
what was going on, but I just don't like doing business that way. You can outvote me, but that's my preference.
Okay. Any other things in the negotiations for staff that anyone feels needs to be clarified?
Well, I think everything else will be taken care of just going through the building and planning departments.
Normal processes for,
Normal entitlement process.
Do we have provisions for discounts on sewer connections, and can we do that? Is there not a way to do that under our existing ordinances?
no,
No?
not currently.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would add that those fees, they go up every year. I think it was a 5-year. So you'd have to include that in your pro formas, that you need to look at the year that you'd be doing construction and paying for the connection fees, because it goes up every year because we had reduced it by 80 or 90%.
Aren't we almost at the,
Yeah, I think
is
it's,
this
I
year
think we
4
still
or
have
5 anyway?
one or two
One
more
year?
years.
2 years left
Yeah.
for the connection fees, right? Okay. All right. So that's it for additional instructions for staff on no matter who gets it. All right, do you want to then go to do you want to go down the line and say what you like, which one you like, or the pros and cons of both? Do we want to just do general what you like about something or what you don't? Or just tell me who you like?
You know, the comments from the gentleman from the public and Denny, you know, I appreciate the fact that you articulated that the smaller development is sort of preferable, and I think if we had multiple parcels of land to develop, I would agree with you 100%. The problem I have is that there's very little government can do to affect, in my opinion, affordable housing. One of the things we can do is offer land available at no cost to be able to make something viable. Because of that, I feel as though utilizing this space to the maximum capacity is what's necessary. I prefer non-transitional housing in this case because I think people need it. I prefer that Palaseek had 160 units because I think that's necessary. So I appreciate your comments. I'm not ignoring those, but we've got one shot and this is it. We're not going to come up with other land to be able to do this again on. So for those reasons, the higher unit count, the larger units, the non-transitional, and something that Mike said struck me, and that is that it's a partnership with the city. And, being is that we're giving up land that our taxpayers currently own, I really look at it that way. So my choice would be Palaseek.
Do you want to go, Brett?
Yeah, I'll go next. So I agree with all of Stacy's comments. And in addition to that, one of my concerns with CCVV is that we were told today that part of their equity in this project is going to depend on fundraising. And to me, that's a real variable. It's a real unknown, and it makes me very uncomfortable. I mean, I want to know that the money is there, and if the development group doesn't have the resources at this point in time, that makes me uncomfortable. And there was no indication that CCVB does have the resources at this time, where Palaseek indicated that they do, and that hasn't been verified through financials, but that is one of my biggest concerns.
So, do you want to go or me?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I agree with some of the things said, but for me, it does boil down to the one thing, and that's numbers. I've been told over and over again that land is one of the underlying factors of why housing costs so much. And since we're going down this road, I'd rather it be 120 units rather than 160. I take the point that Mr. French made, that it's big, and this gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't recall your name, but it is big. But it's a matter of what we need at this juncture. And so I think we've got 3 votes and maybe 4, I don't know.
So, okay, my turn. So I want to echo all that I've heard here because I, first and foremost, believe that transitional housing is not what we need. When I look at the unit sizes, and that's right, really in my mind, I'm looking at all of the projects that we have recently approved and which ones have come up. I'm really want, for me, permanent housing. I want people to know they can stay here in this community, they can retire here and not worry that, 18 months is up and I need to get out so the next guy can get in. I think your seniors are not going to be looking to buy another home or things of that nature. So I feel our current need is much more to the permanent housing arena. I thought both of you did a great job on your affordability mix. I thought you both recognized what you needed there, so I liked that. The biggest thing for me is I think that Palaseek has the expertise in both arenas of managing, running, building. So I think they're just a little more prepared because they also have the ability to front all the soft costs and actually do the designs and the project, where I think that CCVV can get there. I just don't think they're ready to pull the triggers as quickly as what I believe Mr. Snyder and his group can do. And I think getting this housing going is important, and that sooner is better, right? Because we have people in need. I look at those that are, I forgot earlier to say, one of the things we're looking at is to be able to move them out of the hotels in our long-term hotels. So the sooner we can do this, and a lot of those are seniors. And so I really want to get this project going. So I like the solar idea of being able to give rebates back in to keep their ongoing costs for electricity down. I really liked that option also that was mentioned. I think that they have a lot of management experience to recognize even the mailroom that you discussed. So it just shows me that their experience is more. And so for that reason, I guess it's going to be unanimous that we open up negotiations with Palaseek. So, yes.
I move to select Palaseek LLC to develop the project and direct staff to work with a selected proposer to further develop the project proposal and to include the comments made by board members in the negotiations and agreement process with Palaseek.
I have a motion and a second to accept Palaseek with the comments that have been made on the record for additional negotiated items. Is there discussion?
Yes, I just want to make the point that I made earlier. I'll probably get outvoted on that, but in the discussion, when they go into the negotiations, there's two reasons that I would prefer, if this never comes to fruition, that we give the money back and take the land back. I agree completely, we need the land back, is even though they have made the offer to forfeit it, they will do their upfront costs. That's on their side of the equation. On our side of the equation, I feel it puts the city in a sense of obligatory situation, and I'd rather not go there for future considerations if we ever had another opportunity to deal with those people. I don't believe in something for nothing on either side of the equation, but as I say, that's for the negotiations or for you guys to outvote me on if we get there.
Just Supervisor Bonkowski.
Right, so the motion as it stands has a conflict in it because Supervisor Barrett's comment was to return the money and my comment was to not return the money. And the reason that I would give for not returning the money is, first, the transfer tax is paid for the transfer of the property, and that's not a refundable event. That money's gone. Secondly, on the $10,000, we have staff time that's being involved in this that we're paying for, and that $10,000 is not even going to begin to cover our cost in this proposal if it fails. So for that reason, and it's very common that a deposit like that would be forfeit in a situation like this where the project doesn't get built. So again, I'm gonna stand by my recommendation that the money is not returned for those reasons.
As the mover, I will clarify my motion that the money would not be returned. So all of the comments incorporated with the exception of Supervisor Barrett's.
Oh, I seconded it, but I'll go with the will of the majority here. I assume that there are 3 people who feel that way. Yeah, I mean, it's not a big bone of contention for me.
I do need a point of clarification. My reading of their proposal is, and I just need a clarification, is that they're giving $10,000, not plus title transfer and taxes. It's 10,000. It was a flat fee, 10,000 to cover the title transfer and taxes. So I just need it's not? I thought it was a flat, you'll have to come on the record though, and this is just for a point of clarification, so we're clear in the motion. Is it 10,000 plus title transfer and taxes, or the flat 10,000, which would help cover title transfer and taxes?
Can you really quick give me an idea, what would be the transfer taxes? We're talking $1,500 or something?
So on page 20 under 6.1, it says the initial $10,000 purchase price plus any taxes.
Correct. I had said that in the proposal, and I'm okay with that.
But not title. Well, I think it can flip.
It was for the transfer tax specifically.
Okay, I'm just getting it on the record because it's not what's written on one.
Well, they're going to negotiate. They're going to negotiate.
It's fine. So when we're doing the it's better to get it resolved now though, so that we're getting what we expect. So if it's 10,000 plus the transfer tax, just so it's clear.
10,000 flat fees, what you're saying?
Plus the transfer is fine. Okay, just so we're all clear on the motion and there's no surprise when everyone negotiates.
Yeah.
Okay, then any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, and
Thank
we
you very
look
much.
forward to some hard work ahead, but it'll be worth it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to thank the other group for all of their work and efforts. And I really still see an opportunity when I read through their proposal for community partners to do some of the work. I see your group as one of those partners. So I hope that we actually, on behalf of everyone in Carson City, we just got the best of both worlds here. So I really want to thank you, and I just still see a role for you clearly in this project, so thank you. We'll move on to final public comment. I've had a good long day. None? Oh, that's okay, nothing to apologize for, it's what it's all about. Mr. French?
Mr. French, Carson City, Nevada. Madam Chair, and Supervisors, thank you very much. I appreciated your really sort of coming to the nuts and bolts of it. But one of the things that I thought might be missed, or maybe I didn't relate myself correctly, is that we still have building to come in this master plan. And I feel all the additional and future growth should have a part in it, as when anything is to be proposed, that the consideration still be for affordable housing, so that carries on regardless of this particular deal. And I do understand the considerations were very thoughtful, and while I have my own personal feelings, I think it was very well thought out by y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Okay. Then if there's no objection.
I would
we
like
have
to
an
make
objection?
one final comment, apologize to you all. I read the proposals. It was towards the end, and my CDBG gaffe was probably, I might have been asleep by the time I read it. But
Page 2056.
so I want to thank our engineer Stuckey for putting this out, because it was right there, and it was in there. But after 3 years of reading these, I think I probably just was brain dead at the point that I read this proposal.
No problem. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, no objection. We're adjourned. Thanks for a good meeting, you guys.